Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1308B, and today's date is June 16th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Hunt Begins, the Strategy to Take Out the Elite. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, Trump has been going crazy with tweets. Now, the corporate media is out there, and they are using so much propaganda right now because we know what their main objective is. And remember, the corporate media is the mouthpiece for the deep, full and total control of the corporate media. And what we're seeing right now is we're seeing it all being played out in front of us, where their mission is to remove Trump. Now, I am not saying that Trump is a saint. I'm not saying he's a savior. I'm saying that he is not part of the deep state as of yet. Because if he was, they wouldn't be trying so hard to get rid of him. There'd be no reason to do this if he was part of the system. He'd be doing what they wanted. What they're afraid of is that he's a loose cannon. He's not doing what they want, and he's building and creating and coming up with strategies to go after them, to stop their operations. And we're seeing different signs of this all over the place. Now, Trump was out there, and there was propaganda all over the place saying that he's being investigated for the firing of Comey. The special counsel will be looking at that. And again, the special counsel was put into place to look at Russian collusion, not for the firing of Comey or obstruction of justice or anything like that. But now it seems like they're trying to use this to basically get him in any way they possibly can. And Trump tweeted out, "I'm being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director." He said this is a witch hunt. Now, remember, all of this is propaganda coming out of the corporate media. That's what he's saying at this point. And we could see that the reason why this is happening is because the Republicans, those individuals that have been listening to what Comey has said about Loretta Lynch, about what happened with Clinton, and how the FBI decided that it wasn't a case worth investigating because of what Lynch said. Well, it looks like they are calling upon the special counsel to look into Hillary's email scandal. And this should have been done a long time ago because there was obstruction of justice. And we could see the FBI's, their job was not to decide if it should be or should not be investigated. They were supposed to gather the evidence, give it to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then says, okay, we have all the evidence, there's nothing here. But that didn't happen because Comey was directed by Lynch to stop the whole thing. And we have to remember what was said. In Comey's testimony, he confirmed that Lynch directed him to refer to the Hillary email case as a matter rather than an investigation. Not to mention that ill-advised meeting with Bill Clinton on the Phoenix tarmac just days before the Justice Department was set to announce the results of their investigation. And of course, he said this under oath. And we see Trump is out there saying, you know something? They should be investigating what happened with Clinton, with the bleached emails, how her husband met with the Attorney General days before she was cleared. Because that was obstruction of justice. That should be investigated. But of course, they're not going to do that. Deep State is not going to investigate themselves. That's ridiculous. And what we see happening right now is that the Department of Justice, they came out with this warning. And they came out, maybe I'll call it an announcement, where the announcement says Americans should exercise caution before accepting as true any stories attributed to anonymous officials, particularly when they do not identify the country, let alone the branch or agency of government with which the alleged sources supposedly are affiliated. Americans should be skeptical about anonymous allegations. The Department of Justice has long established policy to neither confirm nor deny such allegations. And we can see that they're already out there warning people that, yeah, all this information, it's propaganda because they're just making it up. And we could see from the past that most of this propaganda, say 99.999% of it, turns out to be fake, phony, and false. And we see there's more fake news. All this stuff about Rosenstein recusing himself, about the special counsel going after Trump for obstruction of justice, investigating him. Well, it turns out that there were more anonymous sources, and Rosenstein is saying, no, nothing has changed. Everything is exactly where we were before. Everything the Washington Post, the New York Times is putting out right now, it's complete propaganda. And nothing has been decided or changed or anything like that. They're just trying to gin something up that doesn't exist. Now, we see that when Trump was out in Saudi Arabia, there was this Saudi arms deal. And Rand Paul decided, you know something, I'm going to introduce a bill to stop presidents from making these arm deals until Congress takes a look at it. And we know this was never going to happen. This was never going to pass the Senate. And it didn't. They shot it down. And many people believe that because they shot this down, that this arms deal is real. Well, it was real because Obama actually had the arms deal. Trump used it as a diversion tactic while he was visiting Saudi Arabia. So it's not something that he came up with. He used it to mask what was really going on down in Saudi Arabia. That's what happened. Just because something is voted down doesn't mean that something else is happening. Think about all the bills that became law because of things they told us. Well, we need to protect you against terrorists, so we're going to vote in the Patriot Act. Well, were they really terrorists or were they inside jobs? Did we really need the Patriot Act? No. We're going to have the USA Freedom Act to stop the spying by the NSA, by the FBI, CIA. Well, all they did was shift everything to the corporations, and the corporations give all that information to the FBI, NSA, CIA. Just because they're telling us things or bills are being shot down or approved doesn't mean things are actually happening. I mean, think about it. When there's a false flag and they tell us that we need to take more of your rights away, we need to put up more cameras, we need to take your guns away, well, they're doing it under the illusion that these were real terrorists. No, most of these, I'd say 99.999%, they're completely false flags. They're made up to scare you into doing what they want. It's a mind game that they play on everyone, and especially the bills that they introduce. It's always the opposite of what it really means. The Patriot Act, which really means spy on the American people. The USA Freedom Act, have the corporations spy on the people, give it to the intelligence agencies. The Affordable Care Act, where is it affordable? Think about what they do. It's a mind game, and they know how to play it very, very well to convince everyone of what is happening. And this is what we do. We try to look through this, and we try to analyze everything. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. Hopefully most of the time we're getting it right. And we try to figure out, does this really mean what it means? Are we really in Syria because Assad is a dictator and he's gassing his own people? Are we really bombing the Islamic State? And we come to find out that everything that we discussed in the past all turned out to be true. Everything they told us was completely false. Where the Islamic State was a terrorist group. Well, we've learned that the terrorist group is controlled by the U.S., by Israel, by the U.K., by the coalition forces. We fund them. We support them. The neocons, McCain, he visits with them. So they tell us, no, this isn't the way it is. They're terrorists. And we have to remember how they use these terrorists. If they want to get into a country and they want to have regime change, they use Al-Qaeda, they use Islamic State. They use them to have regime change. Once they're in the country and they replace the elected leader with a puppet government, under the Authorization Act for going after terrorists, anyone who opposes that puppet government is now called Al-Qaeda, even though they're not. They're just people who want their country back. They call them Al-Qaeda because under U.S. regulation, it's legal to go after Al-Qaeda with drones. This is how they work the system. Look in Ukraine. As soon as the southeastern people didn't agree with the new puppet government, they were called terrorists. They were just everyday people who didn't want to go along with this regime change. And they kept on calling them terrorists over and over and over. And they weren't. This is how they play mind games with the public. This is how they trick people into thinking one way when something else is really happening. Now, we know that the deep state, they've been trying to push us into war with North Korea. They've been trying over and over and over, and it seems that it's not working at this point. Now, we understand that Trump has a strategy, not just him, but China, Russia. They have a strategy to calm the situation down and to work things out with North Korea. And we can see that this process is ongoing right now. We see already there was a prisoner that was released. We see the situation in North Korea is actually calming down a little bit. And the U.S. and Chinese diplomatic and defense chiefs, they're going to be meeting on Wednesday for a security dialogue. And Washington says they're going to be focusing on curbing North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. Now, this is what they're saying to the corporate media, which is the propaganda press. And what they're going to be doing behind the scenes is they're going to be talking about how they can all work together and how they can calm the situation down. China is going to be working with this. We see Tillerson's going to be there, and they're going to be trying to calm the entire situation down and work out a strategy where we're not going to war. Now, we see something very interesting where coming out of the Associated Press, and it's all over the corporate media, where the Pentagon, and remember, Trump gave power to the Pentagon to decide how many troops will be going into Afghanistan, what we should be doing in Syria, what we should be doing in the Middle East. And we need to understand that the Pentagon, it's not just one gigantic cohesive system where everyone is working together. It is divided into factions. And right now, Trump doesn't have full control of what is happening there. And he's using those individuals to basically call the shots, which are going to be completely separate and apart from the other factions within the Pentagon. And they're coming up with strategies to go after the elite, the deep state. Now, out of the Associated Press, it's saying that the Pentagon will send around 4,000 additional American forces to Afghanistan to support the existing forces in hopes of breaking a stalemate in a war. Now, what's very interesting about this is, first of all, they didn't make a decision on how many troops are going to be out there. Mattis is out there, and he's the defense secretary. He's saying that there's been no decision made at all. They're looking to have consultation with other government agencies, allies, to decide what they're going to do. And a lot of people are under the notion that we're going to be sending these troops out there to go and protect the poppy fields, which we know are there, that the troops are going to be going out there to keep the war going. But I have something else I see happening here because of what has been said and what is being done. Because, first of all, if it is true, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't, 4,000 troops, is that really going to make a difference? Because we've had hundreds of thousands of troops in Afghanistan, and nothing has happened. Well, we know why nothing has happened. Why? Because all they do is they push the terrorist groups from one area to the other because they don't want the wars to end. They did this in Syria. We reported on this. Every time they had bombing inside of Syria, it would give the Islamic State more land. It would give them more territory, and they expanded. The same thing was happening in Afghanistan. The deep state, the elite, they were never going after the terrorist groups because they controlled the terrorist groups. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that Secretary of Defense James Mattis instructed the U.S. military to abandon the Obama administration procedures and start focusing on killing the Islamic State fighters instead. Now, Mattis looked at our anti-ISIS campaign. He concluded that in some instances, we were essentially just pushing the enemy from one location to another. Dunford explained, he asked me and the military chain of command to make a conscious effort not to allow the Islamic State fighters to just flee from one location to another, but rather deliberately seek to annihilate the enemy. And this is what has been happening. This is why the wars never end, because they don't want them to end. They've been pushing them around, and they finally admitted, yes, this is what's been happening under Obama's strategy. So they're shifting the strategy right now to go after the Islamic State. Who are the Islamic State? Well, they are the paid mercenaries of the deep state, of the intelligence agencies. They are used to cause havoc in each one of these countries. And if you notice, already Trump has said, hands off in Libya. We're not getting involved. Tillerson has already made a remark in Syria that we had no authorization to attack Syrian troops, Russian troops, or Iranian troops. Congress did not authorize this. We see the deep state moved in a missile launcher into Syria. According to Lavrov, the Islamic State is not even in that area. So what we see different factions pushing their agenda and their goals. And what we're seeing right now, I could see the 4,000 troops, well, they're going to target and they're going to go after the elite in these countries. They're going to go after the paid mercenaries. They're going to go after those individuals that have been keeping us in war all this time. That's what I actually see happening right now. When we cut through all of this stuff and all the propaganda, this is why the deep state, the corporate media, is so afraid and worried. This is what they're trying to stop. Their annihilation. They know it is coming. Eventually, as Trump gains more and more control, we already see Mulvaney right now. He's looking to drain the swamp, looking to combine different agencies. We see there's individuals within government that are already saying, listen, this is what's been happening. It's been happening in Syria. It's been happening in Afghanistan under Obama's strategy. And remember, he took full control. He just basically never hit the Islamic State. He let them move from one area to the other. He expanded the territory because they were supporting it for regime change. And if you notice, Trump keeps stepping back and he doesn't talk about regime change. Actually, he doesn't talk in absolute. Now, something else that happened, which is very interesting, Rex Tillerson, the U.S. Secretary of State, confirmed that the U.S. policy towards Iran includes regime change. He came out and said it because he was testifying before the House Foreign Affairs Committee regarding the 2018 State Department budget. And Tillerson was asked whether or not the U.S. supports regime change in Iran. He replied affirmatively, stating the U.S. policy is driven by relying on elements inside of Iran to bring about a peaceful transition of the government. What he's saying is that they want regime change. This has been the policy of the United States all along. Now, what he's saying is that right now, their Iranian policy is under development. They're changing the strategy. Now, he's still playing along with the deep state. Yes, they're the sponsor of terrorism. Yes, they're dangerous. Yes, they're going to be doing this and that. And of course, Iran is fighting back, just striking back with their statements. We need to understand that they're still playing the game. They still need to play the game while they change things in the background. Now, again, these are all plans that are set in motion. Does it mean that they're all going to work out? No. This is what we're watching. It could change in an instance where things don't happen the way we think is going to happen. But right now, we can see what is happening. I don't think that Trump is going to have regime change in Iran. I don't think he's going to have regime change in Syria. I don't think he's going to be going into Libya. I think we're going after the elite and getting rid of these paid mercenaries once and for all. He can't cut off the funding just yet. He's cut off part of it. But remember, they have funding from other operations. They have funding through the poppy field. And that's where they're sending the troops. Because they use that to create opium and they sell it across the world to fund their covert operations. And this is what we are following right now. And we can see right now that basically what is happening here is that they have a strategy. The economy's coming down. The deep state has their strategy. And we're seeing this battle, well, in propaganda through the corporate media. That's the cover story of what's really going on behind the scenes, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than Russian collusion, Russian hacking, the elections. That's the part the deep state, the corporate media is keeping everyone busy with. while everything else is happening in the background, where they're fighting it out, where it's the deep state against Trump and his administration, his other people that he's working with, trying to battle the deep state. And we can see that things are being escalated, because look what happened on the baseball field with Scalise. We can see that this just wasn't an individual that was just roaming around with a weapon and just happened to stumble upon a Republican baseball game. This was pre-planned. This was done, and I'm sure this individual was promised something, but of course they always end up dead. But we can see right now, this was pre-planned. And now, of course, with Scalise, again, he was putting out a video about pedophilia. He was going after and leading the charge against human trafficking. We know that A.J. Sessions is going after human trafficking. We know that Trump is going after the pedophilia, human trafficking. And we can see, again, this is very much what they're afraid of. Because once they start uncovering and they start arresting and they start delving deep into their underworld, this is when things start to really fall apart. And this is when they start to really fight back, because they don't want this exposed. I mean, these are deep criminal elements that have been doing very unethical, very illegal, very immoral things with many different people, with children, with individuals, with you name it. And this is all going to come out into the open. And again, the American people, they're going to be shocked. It's going to take a while for people to comprehend what happened here, because there's so much corruption. There's so much in government that is hidden from the public that when it comes out, a lot of Americans, a lot of people around the world, they're not going to be able to handle this. I mean, if you saw the movie The Matrix, when he learned the truth, he popped. Well, a lot of people are going to pop, and they're going to freak out. But this is the direction we're heading in. Will we reach it? Well, we'll have to wait and see, because all these plans are in motion. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.